When the Vegas mobster interrupted Dean Martin mid-song and treated him like hired help, everyone expected the king of cool to either flee or submit. Instead, Dean did something so brilliant and perfectly timed that even the hardened criminals in the audience couldn't help but respect him. It was a Saturday night in August 1964 at the Sands Hotel, and the Copa Room was buzzing with the kind of energy that only happened when all the stars aligned. Dean Martin was headlining, Frank Sinatra was sitting ringside with his entourage, and the room was packed with high rollers, movie stars, and people whose money came from businesses they preferred not to discuss. Dean was 47 years old and at the absolute peak of his Vegas powers. His television show was dominating ratings, his records were selling millions, and his partnership with the Rat Pack had made him the undisputed king of Las Vegas entertainment. When Dean Martin performed, even the casino bosses stopped counting money to listen. But that night, Dean was about to face a test that would either cement his legendary status in Vegas or destroy his reputation forever. Sitting at table 7, right in front of the stage, was a man who had come to the Sands not to be entertained, but to make a point. His name was Carlo the Hammer Benedetto, and he was one of the most feared enforcers in the Chicago outfit's Las Vegas operations. Carlo wasn't just any mobster. He was a man who had built his reputation on never backing down, never showing weakness, and never allowing anyone, no matter how famous or popular, to think they were bigger than the organization he represented. At 52, Carlo had been involved in organized crime for over 30 years. He had killed men with his bare hands, intimidated judges, corrupted politicians, and made millions of dollars disappear from casino counting rooms. In the brutal hierarchy of Las Vegas organized crime, Carlo Benedetto's word was law. But Carlo had a problem with Dean Martin, and tonight he had decided to do something about it. The problem wasn't personal. Carlo actually enjoyed Dean's music and had attended several of his shows over the years. The problem was respect, or more specifically, what Carlo saw as Dean's lack of proper respect for the men who really controlled Las Vegas. Unlike many entertainers who worked the Strip, Dean Martin had never paid the proper tribute to organized crime figures. He performed in their casinos, made money from their customers, and benefited from their protection, but he never acknowledged their authority. He treated them politely, but not subserviently, like they were just another part of the Vegas landscape, rather than the puppet masters pulling all the strings. This attitude had been bothering Carlo for months. In his world, everyone owed respect to the men with real power, and Dean Martin's casual indifference to organized crime hierarchy was starting to look like disrespect. The final straw had come 2 weeks earlier when Dean had been asked to perform at a private party for some Chicago bosses who were visiting Vegas. It wasn't really a request. In the world of organized crime, when powerful men invited you to entertain them, you didn't say no. But Dean Martin had said no, politely, respectfully, but definitively. He'd explained that he had a prior commitment and couldn't make it to the party. What made it worse was that his prior commitment turned out to be dinner with his family, something that Carlo and his associates saw as choosing personal comfort over showing proper respect to important men. So Carlo had come to the Sands that night to teach Dean Martin a lesson about hierarchy, respect, and who really controlled Las Vegas. He was going to humiliate the King of Cool in front of a room full of witnesses, and he was going to do it in a way that would establish once and for all that entertainers worked for organized crime, not the other way around. Dean was halfway through his second set, performing his signature song, Ain't That a Kick in the Head, when Carlo decided to make his move. The song was building to its climax. Dean was working the crowd with his usual charm, and the audience was completely captivated. That's when Carlo Benedetto stood up from his front row table and did something that stunned everyone in the Copa Room. "Hey," Carlo shouted, his voice cutting through the music like a knife. "Hey, singer!"
The band faltered for a moment, but Dean kept singing, hoping that whatever was happening would resolve itself quickly. But Carlo wasn't finished. He stepped closer to the stage, pointed directly at Dean, and said the words that would change everything. "Forget these paying customers. You sing for me now, boy. Sing for me." The Copa room fell dead silent. Even the band stopped playing. 1,200 people sat frozen in their seats, watching to see how Dean Martin would respond to being publicly humiliated by one of the most dangerous men in Las Vegas. This wasn't just an interruption, it was a direct challenge to Dean's authority, dignity, and status. Carlo was treating him like hired help, like a servant who could be commanded to perform on demand. It was the kind of public humiliation that could destroy an entertainer's reputation forever. Dean could see the entire room waiting for his response. Frank Sinatra was sitting at his usual table, tensed and ready to intervene if necessary. Casino security was hovering near the walls, unsure whether they should get involved. Even the waitresses had stopped serving drinks to watch the confrontation unfold. Dean Martin had perhaps 30 seconds to decide how to handle the most dangerous moment of his career. He could apologize to Carlo and sing whatever he wanted, which would establish him as subservient to organized crime, but might save his life. He could refuse and walk off stage, which would preserve his dignity, but might result in serious consequences later. Or he could try to find a third option that satisfied everyone. What Dean did next became the stuff of Vegas legend. Instead of looking nervous or intimidated, Dean Martin smiled. Not a scared smile, not a fake smile, but the genuine, warm smile that had made him famous. Then he did something that no one expected. He thanked Carlo for the interruption. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dean announced into his microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room, "it looks like we have a special request from Mr. Benedetto here. And you know what? In this business, the customer is always right." The genius of Dean's response was immediately apparent to everyone watching. Instead of treating Carlo's interruption as an insult, Dean was treating it like enthusiastic audience participation. Instead of being humiliated, Dean was taking control of the situation by reframing it as part of the entertainment.
But Dean wasn't finished. "Carlo," Dean continued, looking directly at the mobster with complete composure, "what would you like to hear? I've got all night, and frankly, a man with your reputation deserves the best service this place can offer." What Dean had done was brilliant. He had acknowledged Carlo's power without submitting to it. He had shown respect without showing fear. And most importantly, he had turned a potential humiliation into an opportunity to demonstrate his own class and professionalism. Carlo found himself in an impossible position. He had come to humiliate Dean Martin, but Dean was treating him like an honored guest. If Carlo escalated the confrontation now, he would look like he was attacking someone who was showing him nothing but respect and courtesy. The room held its breath as Carlo considered his options. He could still push the confrontation further, but Dean's response had been so perfectly calibrated that any additional aggression would make Carlo look unreasonable rather than powerful. Slowly, Carlo began to smile, then he began to chuckle, and then, to everyone's amazement, he started applauding. "That's class," Carlo announced to the room. "That's how a professional handles pressure. I like this guy." Carlo sat back down and called out, "Sing whatever you want, Dean. You've earned it." The audience erupted in applause. They had just witnessed something remarkable, a potentially explosive confrontation diffused through nothing but charm, respect, and perfect timing. Dean finished his set with even more energy than before, and when it was over, Carlo Benedetto was among the first people to give him a standing ovation. After the show, Carlo sent word that he wanted to speak with Dean privately. Many people expected this to be the moment when the real confrontation would happen, away from the cameras and witnesses. Instead, what happened was even more remarkable. According to people who were there, Carlo told Dean that in 30 years of dealing with entertainers, politicians, and businessmen, he had never seen anyone handle pressure with such grace and intelligence. "You could have kissed my ass and I would have lost respect for you," Carlo reportedly said. "You could have told me to go to hell and I would have had to hurt you. Instead, you found a way to show me respect while keeping your dignity. That's the mark of a smart man." From that night forward, Carlo Benedetto became one of Dean Martin's biggest protectors in Las Vegas. The man who had come to humiliate him became his unofficial bodyguard, making sure that no other organized crime figures caused problems for Dean's performances. Word of the incident spread quickly through Las Vegas organized crime circles. Within days, every mobster in the city knew that Dean Martin had faced down Carlo the Hammer Benedetto and earned his respect through sheer class and intelligence. The story became a template for how to deal with organized crime in Las Vegas. Show respect without showing fear, maintain your dignity while acknowledging their power, and never let them see you sweat. Other entertainers began copying Dean's approach when dealing with similar situations. Frank Sinatra later said that Dean's handling of Carlo Benedetto taught the entire Rat Pack how to navigate the dangerous waters of Vegas organized crime. Dean showed us that you don't have to be tough to handle tough guys. You just have to be smart, respectful, and absolutely unflappable. He turned a guy who came to destroy him into one of his biggest fans. The incident also changed Carlo Benedetto's reputation within organized crime circles. Instead of being seen as someone who bullied entertainers, he became known as a man who could recognize and respect class when he saw it. Years later, when other crime figures would suggest intimidating or threatening entertainers, Carlo would tell them the story of Dean Martin and explain why respect worked better than fear.
"You can make someone sing through fear," Carlo would say, "but you can't make them sing well. Dean Martin showed me that when you treat someone with respect, they give you their best performance. When you threaten them, you get exactly what you paid for. Nothing." The relationship between Dean Martin and Carlo Benedetto became one of the most unusual friendships in Las Vegas history. The mobster who had tried to humiliate the entertainer became his protector and advocate, and the entertainer who could have been destroyed by organized crime became a respected figure in their world. Dean never spoke publicly about the incident, but those close to him said it taught him valuable lessons about handling pressure and maintaining dignity under impossible circumstances. Dean learned that night that respect is something you earn, not something you demand, his daughter Deanna later said. He also learned that sometimes the most dangerous situations can become opportunities if you handle them with enough class and intelligence. The night that Carlo the Hammer Benedetto tried to humiliate Dean Martin became the night that Dean Martin proved he was truly the king of cool. Not because he was unafraid, anyone would have been afraid in that situation, but because he found a way to turn a potential disaster into a triumph through nothing but wit, charm, and perfect timing. Vegas mobster interrupted Dean Martin mid-song and tried to treat him like hired help, but Dean's response earned him something more valuable than money or fame. He earned the respect of the most dangerous men in Las Vegas, and he did it without compromising his dignity or his principles. In a city where power was everything and weakness could be fatal, Dean Martin proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remain completely cool under pressure.